Good evening and welcome to the League of Women Voters of Westport Municipal Debates. Monday night's debates got rave reviews, and I'm sure that tonight will continue that experience. I want to thank you for joining us on such short notice. As you know, we were forced to postpone our debate Tuesday night and because of the weather suggestion. So I decided to cancel the debate. And it was at the suggestion of the Westport Police and our concerns with the safety of our attendees. And I have to thank the entire debate team for their flexibility under very trying circumstances. I'm Celeste LaCroix, the president of the Westport League, and I hope you've come to the debates with an open mind and will carefully listen to the candidates. Tonight's questions were solicited from the public prior to tonight and were reviewed by our bipartisan screener committee. There will be no questions taken from chat. For your information about the candidates, we have published this year's voters guide, which features all 61 candidates, including the RTM candidates who are running for office. You can find the voters guide on the town's website, our website, lwvwestport.org, and it was highlighted by 06880. In addition, we have joined with the National League of Women Voters, and we are part of vote411.org. You can go to that website, put in your zip code, and get voter information for the whole country is available. Now, you can't see her, but we have a timer tonight, Joan Gilman, and she is timing for each of the candidates, and they can see her. I would like to introduce Sheila Ward, who will be our moderator. She's a former president of our league who will introduce the candidates and announce the rules for tonight's debate. Good luck, everyone. This is an educational experience for everyone, and good luck in the vote next week.
Thank you, Celeste. And as Celeste noted, we do view these debates also as an opportunity for civic education. So one thing we do at the beginning of each panel is to also read a short description of what the commission or board does after we introduce our candidates. After that, I'll then go on and invite our candidates to make their opening statements, after which we'll ask our questions of the candidates. They'll each have an opportunity for a 1-minute response or a yes, no in response to our questions. The planning and zoning candidates will then make their closing statements before we then transition and move on to speak with the candidates for the Board of Education. And I echo what Celeste said. Thank you all so much for changing plans so quickly and flexibly and joining us this evening. It's really important to hear from you all. So the candidates for Planning and Zoning Commission, I will introduce them in the order in which we've sort of drawn numbers for them to make their opening statements this evening. So Michael Cammeyer for the Democratic Party and also Save Westport Now. Then Ron Corwin with the Coalition for Westport. Jack Whittle, candidate for the Republican Party. Danielle Dobin, candidate for the Democratic Party and Save Westport Now. And last but not least, Nel Cohn, candidate for the Democratic Party and Save Westport Now. So the Planning and Zoning Commission consists of 7 elected members, no more than 4 of whom may be members of the same political party. The term of office is 4 years. But in addition, there are also 3 alternate members appointed by a majority vote of the regular members, and that's for 2-year terms. Besides the powers and duties conferred or imposed by state law on planning and zoning commissions, the commission is required to update the town plan of conservation and development at least every 10 years and determines the manner in which zoning regulations are enforced. With that, I will go right ahead and invite Michael to make his opening statement. You're on mute, Michael. Sorry.
Gotta love the famous word of 2020 and 2021. You are on mute. So thank you, Sheila, and thank you to the league for hosting this debate, which will benefit our town and our candidates. I am Michael Cammeyer. I am a husband and a father of 2 middle school boys and our new puppy. We have enjoyed living in Westport for the past 10 years. 5 years ago, I was asked to join the P&Z Commission as an alternate and then elected a full-time commissioner. I love this town and I want to help preserve and enhance all the good things that Westport has to offer. Together with Danielle and Nel, I'm continually planning ahead for the future. Since our team was elected 4 years ago, we've changed the tone of the P&Z. We have made the application process more efficient. We have helped hundreds of our neighbors and commercial tenants. We have created a collaborative and supportive ecosystem within all town bodies and have helped Westport to become what we see downtown today, bright and vibrant. I am the current P&Z secretary. While on the job, we work hard to listen to what all parties have to say and ask thoughtful questions. We are not just a town board that is reactive to applications. Rather, we have taken a stance that we need to be proactive and plan for the Westport of today and the Westport of tomorrow. When the pandemic hit, we did not sit idle. We quickly moved to electronic meetings and have seen attendance soar as compared to in-person meetings. Our quick maneuverability has made the P&Z very successful. I'm excited to share some of our achievements and our plans for the future with you tonight.
Thank you. Ron?
Thanks, Sheila and League. I chaired P&Z from 2006 to 2011. What we approved literally made headlines. P&Z revives Westport downtown. Pop goes the seating. Street side dining can sprout downtown. It did, as we approved vastly expanded outdoor dining. The Wall Street Journal said, Westport's culinary landscape is in a renaissance, driven by a number of recent restaurant openings. Restaurants weren't all we did. We approved the lights for staple sports fields for men and women, and for PAL football at Bedford. Plus, for obvious reasons, we allowed more than one home office in a single residence. More, we approved multiple historic preservation applications. We approved the wise move from its outmoded downtown facility to what we now have at Mahakano. We brought life back to the river's west side, approving 3 additional restaurants, 2 outdoor, and we approved a 3-acre seniors facility at Barron South, preserving the remaining 19 acres as open space. I'm running for the P&Z because I would like to continue working with my colleagues to improve our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack?
Hi, hello, my name is Jack Whittle. I grew up in Westport. I went to Westport schools, rode my bike all over town, spent a lot of time at Campo Beach, swam at Longshore, played on local soccer teams, hung out downtown. And later on, when my wife and I decided to buy a home and raise our own family here, I took them to Campo, took them swimming and now skating at Longshore. We rode bikes all over town. I coached their soccer teams, and yes, I still hang out downtown. I know what it's like to grow up here. I also know why someone chooses to live and raise a family in this special town we all call home. I'm a corporate attorney, and I was previously elected to the P&Z twice, serving as vice chair from 2011 through 2016. I still stand for the same things I did before: preserving Westport's unique small town charm, preserving and enhancing our parks, waterfront areas, and open spaces like Barron South, which I stood for, standing firm on our existing rules on too big, too tall, too dense developments. And in every matter, I will continue to listen to, protect, and fight for the residents of this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle?
Thank you. I'm Danielle Dobin, and I'm the elected chair of Westport's Planning and Zoning Commission. My husband, Chris, and I have 2 wonderful teen boys and 1 sweet dog. I chair ArtSmart townwide for the PTA Council. I became involved with the P&Z 4 years ago because I thought we needed a major course correction. Our downtown was dying, our restaurants were overregulated, the P&Z was ignoring state mandates to create housing, and was inexplicably turning down excellent traffic improvement projects. I'm so proud of what Michael, Nel, and I have accomplished as a team since joining the commission. From changing the rules to make it easy for stores to open downtown, creating a new simple process for outdoor dining approvals, supporting sustainable economic development, and prioritizing climate resilience, we deliberately led the P&Z to act as a partner to the First Selectman, not a self-styled obstructionist to investing in our town's amenities and sidewalks. We've been able to accomplish all of this in the midst of a pandemic because we work together as a team, which is why your vote to reelect all three of us matters so much. I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight, and a huge thank you to the League for hosting us.
Thank you. Neil?
Good evening. I'm Nel Cohn. My wife, Rachel, and I have three wonderful children, really living the dream here in Westport. I'm a P&Z commissioner, and I'm also the chair of the Economic Growth Subcommittee that I established. I also serve on Westport Public Arts Commission and the Little League, which is fantastic. I'm running here as a team with Danielle and Michael, and as Danielle said, we are really proud of what we've accomplished over the last 4 years. We've changed the tone in this commission. We've made it collaborative, focused, impactful. We really listen. Quality of life is so important, and the P&Z can make such a difference. We've worked hard to revive downtown. We've prioritized sidewalks. We've invested in fields and parks. We protected our beaches. We want to continue to serve this town. We've done a lot in 4 years. There's a lot more to do. We are proving that we can help. Please vote all three for P&Z.
Okay, thank you. We'll turn now to questions. And I should note that we sourced our questions from the community. We received a lot of really good questions. And as always, the League vetted these questions with our panel of Republican, Independent, and Democrat members to ensure that they are as nonpartisan as possible. So these are questions coming from our community. And now that we've gone through our order of opening statements, we'll start the first question with Ron, and then go in the rest of the order: Jack, Danielle, Neil, and Michael. So here's the first question. The P&Z has many subcommittees. Are the right committees in place? Which ones are working effectively? And what would you do to change about the conduct of work at the committee level?
I am not aware of all of the subcommittees that the P&Z has, though I think what I have had is had some experience with the downtown subcommittee. And I thought, frankly, that Mr. Cohen did a good job at that committee, and we made some good progress on the issue of bus shelters. Getting work done in the commission is really a challenge. And one of the things that I would do would be I would reorder some of the work of the commission so that it would have a friendlier stance with the applicants. There are some things that the commission deals with that are basically routine applications having to do with whether or not a sideline is right or a setback is proper. That is not something that should take all the time of the commission as much, for example, as a discussion of Barron South. And I would try to order the process so that the most important things get the most attention.
Thank you. Jack?
Well, there's a lot of good work that goes on in subcommittees, having formed and chaired a number of them myself. I think the most important change I would make to the way we're running our subcommittees at the P&Z these days is to shift the time for these, when these committees are held, to in the evening, so that more Westport residents can join. Currently, many of them are held during the day and during the workday. And frankly, a lot of Westporters are working and they can't take time out of their jobs to get to these subcommittee meetings. So and it's so important to gain as much input as possible from our residents in town. So that's the number one thing I would do to encourage and allow for more participation from the townspeople. Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle?
Thanks so much, Sheila. So I'm delighted with how our current team has utilized the subcommittees to focus on planning. So for example, I founded an affordable housing subcommittee to address the mandates from the state to create affordable housing that Westport was essentially ignoring for a long time. Nel created the Economic Development Subcommittee to focus on helping downtown. Michael runs our POCD, the Plan of Conservation and Development High-Level Review. One of the most important changes we made was ensuring that our subcommittee work is inclusive. And that means scheduling the meetings when the most number of Westporters can attend. So that I think the median age of Westporters now is 36. We have a lot of parents of children. Parents of older children are coaching and driving. Parents of younger children are putting them to bed. Everybody these days after work wants to spend time with their families. And when we held meetings at night, we had a trickle of people, 3 or 4, all the same, of a certain age group, not really representative of who lives in the town now. By hosting the meetings when we do in the middle of the day, we've had hundreds and hundreds of people in the aggregate, and we've ensured that parents in Westport are able to participate in the planning process.
Thank you. Nel?
Yes, we've done a good job with these subcommittees. I think there are quite a few of them, some of them much more active than others. But as Danielle said, the Affordable Housing Subcommittee that she actually founded did tremendous work. It got us our first moratorium and changed the town, gave us the ability to plan our own destiny, to really focus on planning. Same as the subcommittee that I helped found, which gave us the ability to find issues that were not being translated to the Planning and Zoning Commission, to go out there and listen to the town, understand what issues they wanted to get done, and help them bring that to the commission. What Michael's done also with POCD, I think recognizing what was missing, finding a way to go and address those issues and to bring them to light so we could actually get them to the commission. So I think we're doing a good job.
Thank you. Michael?
So it's a good question that you ask, because we ran our, let me back up and say, yes, we're doing a good job. We're doing a great job. And we frequently review the subcommittees, probably more frequently than prior years, to say, do we have the right subcommittees? Do we want to continue them, etc. Yes, I formed the POCD high level subcommittee because you know what? This document shouldn't be a once every 10-year document. It should be a living document. Let's identify weaknesses. Let's make it stronger. Let's continue it. Let's move it along. And as far as, you know, it's interesting is that we had subcommittees before the pandemic. We had them at night. We had them in the middle of the day. We had them all the time. And I was shocked to see more and more members of the public joining in the middle of the day via Zoom while they were taking lunch, because at the end of the day, everybody can take lunch and most everybody can hit a Zoom call right in the middle of the day. I work till crazy hours. Nel does. We all do. We all want to be with our families when they get home from school. I coach lacrosse. I coach soccer, and I don't have as much time in the evening. We make our time, but during the day it's worked, and we're seeing the evidence of the people coming.
Okay, thank you all. So for the next question, we'll begin with Jack. What initiatives would you actively support to combat the impact of climate change in Westport, in particular, the risk of flooding?
The risk of flooding. Well, there are two kinds of flooding. There's flooding from the when the sound backs up with storm surge, but more often we're talking about flooding from rainfalls, rainfall events, significant rainfall events like we had a couple days ago. A lot of that comes from the fact that we are losing our impervious spaces in town. So we really need to reconsider our massively paved parking lots and perhaps incentivize people not to pave parking lots, but to use pervious surfaces so that we get better ground absorption. Things like that would really go a long way to addressing the rainwater flooding that we're seeing these days. Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle?
So climate change resilience is so important. Our storms are more intense and our tides are rising. We are approaching this problem in two ways. With regards to the rising tides, we have gone to court to stop illegal flood and erosion structures that private owners put in front of their homes that end up creating erosion conditions at our beaches. We began several months ago an entire overhaul of Westport's drainage regulations to directly address the fact that every time it rains, people are seeing Muddy Brook, Dead Man's Brook, flood over. There is a vast network of underground drainage pipes and above ground brooks that runs all through Westport. Many people don't even know that these exist in their yard. We've brought together the town engineer, the P&Z staff, the conservation director, and the town attorney to map through how we can start proactively scoping this vast network of drains to make sure that if 3 miles away there's a drainage obstruction under somebody's private yard, an issue in Coleytown isn't going to bubble up. This is a huge problem. It's going to take a lot of study, but we started it, we're on it, and we're going to make sure that we make conditions better.
Thank you. Neil.
Yes, I think it's important to note that not everybody on this panel agrees with that climate change is man-made, and climate change is getting worse. And I think that this commission is running the study that Danielle talked about because we recognize climate change is here, it's real, it's impacting us now, and it's likely to get much worse. We are hitting the time of no return. We're a coastal town. We need to address the drainage as we are doing. We need to be extreme, to really think forward, not just for now, but what's it going to be like in 5 years? What's it going to be like in 10 years? This is a problem that we're going to consider and see. And then hopefully, I'd love to talk more about climate action, what we can be doing as a town. And we are doing a lot, but I think we could be doing more. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Michael.
It's a great question. I guess it's a good topic also considering what happened Tuesday night. I think, it's no secret that the 100-year storm is not happening once every here and there. It's happening more and more and more frequently. Our tides are rising, as Danielle says. If these things happen at high tide, we have flooding issues down in the beach area. We are actively, it's not our act right now. It's a hot topic that we are going to be changing the regulations for drainage because it needs to be changed. Climate change is here. It's not going anywhere. We've gone to court to protect our neighbors from bad actors that have potentially hurt and ruined other people's properties as well as town beaches. And so these are things that we're exploring actively, and it's a good topic. And as you said in the beginning of this debate, an educational one. And what we can do, what we are doing better, as I've said this before, is surround ourselves with even smarter people that can help us understand drainage, understand flooding, and understand the climate change.
Thank you. Ron.
Well, climate change is really the issue here, and it would be great if we could do something to lessen the rain and to lower the tides. But those are things that we can't do on a local level. The Planning and Zoning Commission has taken a variety of very good steps and has historically for the last 10 or 12 years in dealing with homes that are threatened with super high tides, in causing them to be elevated, in seeing that they get relief in certain height limitations. And there are steps that a Planning and Zoning Commission can take to impact the architecture and development of the residences that will be helpful. Downtown is an even more complicated issue because it is basically a low-lying area susceptible to flooding. And the commission can and does and should enforce more rigorous climate control action.
Thank you. The next question will go first to Danielle. Has there been adequate planning for infrastructure needs associated with the increased residential and commercial development along the Post Road? What more needs to be done, and how do you see it being funded?
Thanks, Sheila. Well, I think what we've learned is that we need to come up with our own planning. As most of you know, State Law 830G mandates that every town in Connecticut have 10% of their housing as affordable. And if they don't, developers can bypass our local laws. Because the Commission for many, many years ignored this obligation to create housing, unlike our friends in Darien and New Canaan who have protection from 830G. We deal with the threat of developers overbuilding in our areas, and no one's going to come to our rescue in terms of our infrastructure. The infrastructure is insufficient for the traffic, for the type of fire trucks we're going to need, et cetera, to deal with larger structures. So what's incredibly important is that we continue our work to proactively create our own housing, like our commission is doing in West Parish, where we are building smaller density, but entirely affordable housing to ensure that we have enough points to be compliant with state law, but we stay in control of what gets built in there, because it's a lot easier to control our zoning and limit development than it is to create an all new post road.
Thank you. Neil.
Sorry, Sheila, do you mind clarifying the question? I'm sorry. Sheila, I'm sorry, your mute's on.
Sorry about that. Has there been adequate planning for the infrastructure needs associated with the increased residential and commercial development along the post road? What more needs to be done, and how do you see it being funded?
Okay. That's a good question. There can always be more. I think we're getting, the town is shifting and changing, and we've been reactive until now. And as Danielle said, the main change that we've implemented from 4 years ago and hope to continue is a focus on planning. Now that we have this moratorium, as Danielle referred to, it takes some of the pressure off of us. We're working on successive moratoriums. We're working now that we could have more time not to be reactive to things that are thrown at us, but to look at the ways to plan our town better and to get the infrastructure that we need without spending a lot of money and time in courts. So I don't have all the answers, but I know that we have really great people on staff. I know that we're going to continue to listen to the town, but I do know that we're going to have more time and more focus on planning going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael.
So it's a great question you ask. I think that, to follow up on what Danielle and Neil were talking about, we have to understand what they're talking about. For many years, we did not, as a town, did not follow our state mandate and obligation to meet some affordable housing requirements, laws. And some say that we fought against developers. Well, recently, I would say that we wrestled against the 830G itself, and that we are now in control. We have our moratorium. We don't have to fight the developers. Now we can work with the developers and plan for it smarter to have these successive moratoriums so developers can't bypass local regulations. They can't bypass local regulations. And so now they have to work with us. And now Westport has a say in where these things can go.
Thank you. Ron.
A challenging question, and I have to disagree a bit with my colleagues here, because I keep hearing 830G as if somehow that was creating problems on the post road. I actually think that the Amazon facility will have a lot more to do with traffic on the post road than some residential housing. But I do think that we can be more sophisticated in how we address the traffic issues at the application level. We need to pay attention carefully to turning so that cars are not making left or right-hand turns across traffic into oncoming traffic. These things need to be thought about. They need to be applied rigorously. The developers need to show us how the new facility will not impact traffic.
Thank you. Jack.
Well, I need to address one misstatement. The moratorium this town currently enjoys regarding 830G was accomplished due to the efforts during my time on the Planning and Zoning Commission and the affordable housing stock that we encouraged and received. That's what this currently led commission dropped into. They did not accomplish the moratorium. With regard to the question in particular, I agree with Ron. It's much broader than those few 830G projects. We need to push for more sidewalks. We need to better pedestrian crosswalks with activated lighting. We need to be much better at recognizing the traffic impacts of developments and legitimate traffic studies, and and requiring developers to mitigate traffic impacts and address nearby intersections and clear up the traffic issues that are being created by their developments. That's enough out of me. Thank you. I see I got the stop sign.
Thank you. Our next question will go first to Neil. So the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, which has been mentioned already, has the following mission statement: to encourage proactive development and preservation of affordable housing choices for present and future residents of Westport. Affordable housing choices for present and future residents of Westport, including the development of affordable housing for families. And the question portion is, do you perceive a need for more affordable housing for seniors specifically in Westport?
I think that would be terrific. Obviously, also as we began looking at in our affordable housing subcommittee was points that was really not looked at before. We had a very strong focus on creating great affordable housing that was meaningful, that was respectful to the families, but that also got the points that we needed to achieve that moratorium. So I do believe we should, there were many plans to find better senior housing. I think that we should continue to find ways to get more senior housing in Westport. I think one of the first buildings that we did approve was that great senior housing center over by on the Post Road, next to 1177, next to the 830G across from Greens Farm School. But I think it's definitely something that can continue to be looked at.
Thank you, Michael.
So I think it's important to note that out of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, we have created ADUs, which are accessory dwelling units, and we permit now accessory apartments. We're trying to think about having seniors age in our town. Why should someone have to scale back and leave our town? So the answer to your question, yes, we need. We love having affordable housing for seniors and for all. It should be. I can't tell you how many times, and this has happened recently, we're out talking to people in the community, and there have been single mothers that have been recently divorced that have quietly said to us, thank you, thank you, thank you, because I couldn't have stayed in this town without the work that you guys have done. And while some people are not ecstatic about certain affordable housing, it's our police officers, our teachers, it's single parents. And I think it's important that we maintain that as well as our seniors and let them stay in this great town. This town has great things to offer, and there's no reason why, if they want to scale back, they can't do it in this town.
Thank you. Ron?
Sheila, could you repeat the question for a second? Just repeat the question.
Of course. The question was, do you perceive a need for more affordable housing for seniors in Westport?
Okay. Yes. And I think that having more affordable homes for seniors would add to the richness of the community in general. There are many people who are forced out of Westport because as they no longer have need for a larger home and wish to move to something smaller and easier to maintain, they find that the choices that are available to them are very limited. And that's unfortunate. So the answer is simply yes. Diversity matters. It adds to the richness of the community. The commission has done recently some things that are in that direction and should be applauded for it, but we need more, we need more and choices for people in housing in Westport.
Thank you. Jack?
Well, I was glad to hear that someone referred to the senior housing complex behind I think it's 1177 or behind it, the old Kowalski property. That was built thanks to the senior housing zoning regulation that I wrote myself and Kathy Walsh wrote to address the need for more senior housing in town. That's some of the things we did to respond to it. But it's true, we do need to find ways to encourage more affordable housing for seniors. You know, we worked on senior housing and got it at the corner of the old Daybreak Nursery site. Those duplex units there are age restricted, recognizing the need. We also kept the age limit at Whitney Glen when they came to us and some of them wanted us to lower it to make their units more valuable and fetch higher prices. So there are a lot of ways you can keep your eye on the ball for the need for more senior housing and allow our seniors to age in place in town. And it's something that I would continue to work on, as I did with the senior housing regulation I wrote. Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle?
Thanks, Sheila. So the senior housing on the Post Road, which I voted for, is terrific, but it's really, really expensive. The units at Daybreak, they're also really, really expensive. They sold for almost $1.5 million each. And I think the issue for seniors in this town was finding something that was accessibly priced. So what we did at the commission in the last year was widely permit accessory dwelling units and accessory apartments. Accessory apartments means that anyone can create within their home a separate apartment, which they can then rent to somebody else, or they can move into it themselves and rent the main house out. They can also create an ADA compliant separate guest house, which means that somebody who wants to age in place in Westport, who wants to keep their garden, who doesn't want to spend $1 million, almost $1.5 million to live in a duplex on a busy road, instead can, for very little money, create an ADA compliant guest house for themselves and then rent out their main house to another family so that they get to maintain their quality of life. They can stay on their street, they can stay in their community. We should be doing more, and we are doing more, but the accessory apartments and the ADUs are a game changer for seniors to be able to stay in Westport.
Thank you. All right, quickly a yes, no question for all of you. Do you support the ban on recreational marijuana establishments in Westport? You can give a thumbs up if you support it or a thumbs down if you do not. Okay, thank you. Our next question will go to Michael first. What is your preferred solution for the Kribari Bridge?
I think first off, the Kribari Bridge is something that the first selectman and the state need to talk, discuss, negotiate. What I can say is the Kribari Bridge, we need to keep 18-wheelers out of that area. It's a choke point. It'll only be a larger choke point if things change there. Traffic, as we've talked about in this town, is not good. And down in that area is not great at all. There is nowhere for cars to go. There's one lane in, one lane out. So with it being a choke point, but what we can do is we can be supportive of the first selectman and not obstruction, and listen to our community, and listen to our neighbors, and listen to what everybody has to say, and then react. But the reality is the Kribari Bridge needs to stay essentially how it is.
Thank you. Ron?
Well, the Kribari Bridge is a major choke point in Westport. We are in a situation where there are basically only 3 ways to go from the east and the west, or west to east in Westport. And as a result, there are several natural choke points. We had an opportunity several years ago to participate in a $40 million gift that was would have been provided to Westport to begin to study the alternatives that would be available to replacing the bridge or rebuilding the bridge or figuring out exactly what to do with the bridge. Unfortunately, Westport turned that down. And now the state is going ahead anyway and beginning to address the need to do something to help relieve the pressure on that choke point, which would not include letting 18-wheeler trucks go down 136.
Thank you. Jack?
Well, I'm pretty well known for fully supporting, keeping and preserving the wonderful Crabari Bridge in the Saugatuck area. It's a historic bridge. It has significant visual impact. It's an element that contributes to the charm and feel of that area. And driving through it during the holidays when it's adorned with lights is absolutely magical. It does not cause or contribute to traffic in that area. That's not a choke point. It's the T intersection that is what causes traffic. That's a mistake. Instead, also protects the Saugatuck neighborhood from being used by tractor trailer trucks diverting off of I-95 during rush hour. Just imagine 18-wheelers rolling through there. We did not turn down $42 million. We just refused to authorize federal funding and place it on the State Transportation Improvement Program. That's called STIP, until they would tell us what they intended to do with the bridge. And they would not say what they were going to do. Once the DOT finally reveals what their Crabari Bridge proposal is, and if the town is comfortable with their proposal, then that money can easily be put back on the STIP at the next monthly meeting. It is not gone. That's erroneous. I see some people have claimed that we foolishly turned down that money. Once the 42 million gets listed on the STIP, the DOT can draw down on the funds for anything it wants. It becomes the DOT's slush fund. It's a blank check for anything they want to do. So those who decry why we didn't accept the $42 million to go in the STIP for the Crabari Bridge don't seem to know this or don't understand how it works.
Thank you. Danielle?
Well, first and foremost, it's critical that we ensure that the bridge is safe. It's really important that if the bridge is distressed, it's repaired. It's also really important, and obviously all of us agree on this, that trucks can't utilize the bridge. Waze is diverting tremendous numbers of cars and trucks onto our local roads all the time. There could be an 8-lane bridge where that bridge is, and that would not make any difference in terms of traffic. So I have to agree with Jack. I don't think that the bridge is the choke point. The choke point exists after the bridge. As a community, we need to come together and find a way to ensure that we have safe passage over the Saugatuck, that we don't invite trucks onto our roads, and that the DOT works with us to ensure that whether it is an arch on either side of a bridge or repairing the current bridge, there has to be some way for us to ensure that traffic can flow, that the bridge is safe, and that boat traffic can pass below it as well to ensure that we're providing access to what will soon be a newly dredged Saugatuck.
Thank you. Neil?
Hi. Yeah, the bridge is gorgeous. We all love it, but it does need to be safe. It needs to be kept in good repair. I do also agree that the main problem there is the T more than the bridge for traffic. And clearly we can't allow trucks to go on there. Waze has changed traffic patterns, not just there, but all around Westport. And it's important that does not become a further problem for Westport. Doesn't disrupt our life. So, you know, in this situation, I think we do listen to the first selectman. We do what we can to keep that bridge safe and operable and beautiful.
Thank you. Michael?
I answered this first,
Yes, you did.
but I'm happy
So
to
we'll move on
answer.
to, you can answer it again if you'd like. So we'll move on to our next one, which will go first to Ron. If you could change any previous P&Z decision, what would it be and why?
Uh, Boy, it's a toss-up. The one I would change, if I only get one, would be the one having to do with Save the Children. Here was an application that came along that was proposed by a developer to take over the Save the Children building, add one floor, which would have made it as tall as National Hall, to build a bridge making from Gorham Island to the west side of the river, and widening the corner of 33 and Route 1, which has become a massive traffic jam. And that application was turned down by Mr. Jack and Whittle and several of his Republican colleagues who were controlling the commission at the time. And it was a huge mistake with an opportunity to alleviate traffic at one of the worst, arguably the worst intersection of Connecticut. And for those who have been stuck on Riverside Avenue, we can say thank those who voted against granting that application to build another facility, living facility in Westport.
Thank you. Jack?
Thanks, Ron. I'm quite sure that one decision is why that intersection is so challenged. I would change the Hiawatha settlement. I think it was a terrible, short-sighted mistake for the P&Z to settle the lawsuit brought by the developer there on Hiawatha Lane, which allowed that project to go forward with a slight reduction in the number of apartment units. The P&Z commissioners involved in that decision, many of whom are on the stage here, abandoned those Westport residents who live in the Hiawatha, Davenport, and Dr. Gillette neighborhood. And we will all have to suffer, not just them, but all of us will suffer for the loss of this important low-income neighborhood and the traffic that will surely come from a 157-unit complex. I understand settling cases. I have managed and settled many cases during my career, but the approach and the considerations are different when making these decisions as a P&Z commissioner. There is value in these matters in simply keeping up the fight, extracting even more concessions along the way, and keeping the project from coming online for as long as possible. That is itself of high value. Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle?
Thanks, Sheila. I would say the settlement of Hiawatha is actually one of the decisions we made that was the toughest, but of which I'm most proud. We were losing that case. There was an application for 187 units with absolutely no work for drainage, no landscaping, no concessions. Also at risk in front of the state Supreme Court was Westport losing its opportunity to decide where and when the sewer is connected. Yes, that means that the sewer could have been connected to large lots in Coleytown or in long lots where people could then create projects that were 300 units, 1,500 units. Also at stake in that case was our moratorium, which was being questioned. As a result of our intelligent, thoughtful settlement, we were not only able to reduce the size of that project, but we were able to ensure that Westport has maintained its control over our multifamily development and our sewers. But that type of attitude that Jack demonstrated is exactly the attitude, the short-sighted thinking that led his commission to say no to moving the house at 1 Wilton Road, no to the DOT creating a dedicated left turning lane there. The result of that has been so much traffic in that area and the institutionalization of the worst traffic in Westport on that site. Sometimes the best decision that a commission can make is to make the really hard decision, but move us forward as a town.
Thank you. Neil?
Wow, I know I shouldn't compliment you, Danielle, but that's exactly making that decision in Hiawatha was one of the hardest things any of us had to do. but it was the only way to move us forward. And absolutely 100%, every time I'm on Wilton Road and I sit there in that traffic, my kids know the story already. They like to talk about it, but it's sad. We were so close for a few inches, for a small difference there, the stubbornness to dig our heels in and say, no, we're going to fight this developer and we're going to pay for that for decades or more by having bad traffic at this intersection. It's just short-sighted. It's stubbornness. It's ego. It's not what we do now. We've changed that tone. It's wonderful now. We listen to our constituents. We listen to the good developers. We listen to the people that are doing the right thing, and we try to make smart choices.
Thank you. Michael.
So just to remind everybody, and I'm going to answer this question about 1 Wilton Road, the developer of Save the Children building was going to move 1 Wilton Road, paving the way for the state to create a left-hand turn lane and fix that intersection. Okay, I understand we have to fight for density. We have to fight for height of buildings, right? And we don't want that, but you can't let that go unknown. You can't keep fighting and look for concessions for 14 inches. Sometimes it's not about fight, and keep fighting. Let's get it. We should have gotten that done. We should have figured out how to work with the developer and had him move the house and had the state come in and fix that intersection. It's a terrible intersection. Everybody knows it. And there's not much that can be done at this point. Hopefully we can fix it in the future, and we can work with the town and we can work with the state and figure out other ways. But if there was one decision I'd go back and change, it would be that one.
Thank you. Right, in order for us to wrap up at the top of the hour and have time for your closing statements, I will give you all 2 very quick yes/no questions, and then we'll start your closings. So first, is Westport doing enough to keep Long Island Sound and our waterways clean and safe for upcoming generations of families? Yes or no? Thank you. Do we have enough parking downtown? Thank you. So with that, we'll turn to closing statements, which will be in reverse order from opening. So we'll start with Neil.
Thank you, Sheila. Wow. I think some of the differences have come out here. It's clear. Some people want this town to stay the same. I don't believe in magical thinking. I'm proud of what we did to make things better. You can tell by listening to Danielle, to Michael, and me. We're proud. We're proud of what we've done over the last 4 years. This town is better. It's more vibrant. There's a reason why people are moving to Westport. We all live busy lives. We prioritize where we could spend our time. We want to spend time with family. We want to spend time with things we love. We do this job because we love this town. We do this job because we can, because we make a difference. 4 years ago, when we won this majority, the town was in a very different place. The former P&Z, before we took over, it was about just saying no. They weren't looking to create affordable housing. They were going to get into more lawsuits. We adopted many, many lawsuits, lots of problems, courts that were annoyed with Westport. And we had to find a strategy. Danielle started the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. We looked at how do we get to that moratorium. We got there. We were going to get more. We're not going to be in the problems that others were in. Darien and New Canaan figured out how to do planning. We do planning. Climate change wasn't recognized. It wasn't recognized. It was taken out of the POCD of a 10-year plan. And that's part of why we're suffering now. We're going to put it back. Michael's done a great job. We're going to get there. And the town worked on setting up a downtown plan. That also wasn't included in the 10-year plan. It was never even officially adopted. We've come up, we've done some of what was in that downtown plan. Now we have a downtown plan, a DPIC, an implementation committee. We're turning things around. It's great. We want this town to be vibrant. We love this town, and we look forward to continuing what we're doing and making this town a wonderful place for our families, making this town a wonderful place for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
I go last.
Michael goes last.
Sorry about that. Danielle.
Thanks, Sheila. I think in closing, what I'd really like to do is recap how our team, Michael, Neil, and myself, along with our allies on the commission, have made such an impactful difference in the past 4 years, because we didn't have a chance to talk about everything. So first, we approved so many new sidewalks, despite opposition from some Republican P&Z commissioners. We revised the rules downtown with intent to make it easier for retailers to open. Preservation is amazing, but if preservation goes too far, it becomes suffocation. And that's what was happening. We rewrote and we simplified our entire process for outdoor dining, and everybody's seen the results of it. We zoned for bus shelters, finally, so workers don't have to stand outside on days like yesterday in the rain. We zoned for and we approved deeply affordable housing for adults with special needs, despite the fact that certain Republican commissioners on the P&Z fought against it, because we don't believe that kids with special needs that grow up in our community should be forced to move away from their families. We changed the P&Z process to fast-track roof-mounted solar on municipal buildings and schools. We changed neighborhood notices so they no longer look like junk mail. They now look like this. So people are informed about what's happening in their neighborhood. There's a big red stamp that says important town notice on every envelope that goes out. We put an end to wasting taxpayer money on endless lawsuits that the P&Z was losing. We zoned for guest houses so that Westporters, especially our seniors, can flexibly use their properties. We approved and prioritized replacing the old toxic turf fields. We earned our first moratorium from 830G, but more importantly, we put ourselves on a pathway to successive moratoriums in the future. We completely changed the tone at P&Z to work as partners with the town. And that has made all the difference. And that will make all the difference, because whoever wins the selectman's race, and whether you're looking for Westport to retain control over multifamily, or if you simply want the pools at Longshore to finally get heated, you absolutely should vote for all three of us, because we aren't here running because we want to bring back the Westport of anyone's childhood in the 1960s. We're running for the Westport today, and we're running to represent the beautiful, vibrant Westporters of today. So please vote for all three of us.
Thank you. Jack.
Well, I still stand for the same things I always have, which is guarding against overdevelopment in every part of town, commercial and residential areas, while guiding appropriately sensitive, new and fresh development, preserving our sensitive waterfront areas, our parks, and our few remaining open spaces, working hard to manage and reduce traffic impacts with every new development, and standing up for the interests of all Westport residents. I don't just claim to stand for these things. I have a track record of actually accomplishing these things, like writing the regulation protecting the public's access to the Saugatuck River, rezoning and creating the Wadsworth Arboretum, working hard to shape the look of Church Lane, Elm Street, and Main Street we have today, which others are taking credit for here, and designing Barron South as designating Barron South as open space. And I think we can do more. And now Danielle, Michael, and Neil want to rezone and develop Barron South. And there are those here who didn't keep up the fight for Westport residents who live in the Hiawatha Lane area. That's what has motivated me to run for the P&Z again. Above all else, I am interested in serving the residents of this town, placing their interests first in every matter, in every proposed use of town land, in every proposed text amendment, and in every planning exercise. I don't think it is some kind of balancing test where the town's residents have to give up something every time a developer asks us to change the rules for them. I think my voice, my views, and my perspective is needed back on the P&Z. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron?
Thanks, Celeste, and thanks to the league for this evening and the effort that they have put into bringing these debates to the public. I hear a lot of I in what I think is essentially a team sport. And my sense of that is that there were and are lots of we that is required on the Planning and Zoning Commission to be an effective steward of our environment. My vision is to ensure that we continue to live in a vibrant and vital town. Westport is not a museum. It's a thriving, active community. Preservation and nostalgia play a part for sure, but equally important is need to envision, prepare for, adapt to, and bridge to the future. After my commission service, I co-founded the Coalition, a political party of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. We've championed many ideas, several recently adopted by the commission and others. 10 years ago, we proposed moving Parker Harding and Jessup Green parking away from the river and opening the riverfront with green areas, restaurants, retails, playgrounds, a life. The coalition champions complete streets for drivers. We support Sustainable Westport's efforts to deal with the climate, including advancing the realization date for net zero. We would suggest that dealing with the traffic requires a professional traffic person on the town staff. It shouldn't be left to volunteers and folks who don't fully understand what's going on. It would be a privilege to serve this town again on the commission as a coalition member representing all of Westport. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you all for making the time today to host this debate. I care deeply about Westport and its future. As a result of the pandemic, we have all been made more aware of our surroundings and the amazing features that our town offers. In order to preserve our town, our ability to walk on a trail, play in our parks, and enjoy our coastline, we need to work to maintain these treasures and keep them accessible to our residents. We are always responsive, respectful, and ready to listen to our neighbors and all applicants who come in front of us. My record shows that we have helped protect our beaches, working to enforce that all residents abide by the proper rules for flood and prevention structures. As residential redevelopment projects come in front of us, like the Belta Farm subdivision, we prioritize drainage and density. I have voted to approve more sidewalk access in our downtown areas, to legalize bus shelters, and more importantly, we as a collective P&Z work very hard to wrestle the control of development back from developers. For many years, developers could propose a large multifamily project to meet state regulations and bypass all local zoning. Instead of fighting, we now can work with these developers and stay in compliance with the state mandated laws. This gives Westport the say in where development occurs, not developers. We changed the regulations downtown to spark economic development. We transformed outdoor dining regulations in the pandemic. We are reviewing and changing drainage regulations. We made the P&Z process more efficient. One of the more important contested topics that I'm proud to say we voted yes to is we permitted a pathway to create affordable housing for adults with special needs. Commissioners from our opponent's party voted against this. Thank you again, and we look forward to winning your vote for another 4 years. Vote all 3 for P&Z.
Thank you. And thank you all very much for joining us, for being flexible and coming to your Zoom screens this evening. And thanks to our audience for listening. I got a quick message on the chat here that when we did our yes and no questions, not all of the audience couldn't see everybody with your thumbs. I was asked to announce the votes because they could only see this one speaker at a time. So I can announce that there was a unanimous vote that Westport is not doing enough to keep Long Island Sound and our waterways clean and safe for upcoming generations. To the question, do we have enough parking downtown? I think it was a near unanimous vote that we do not, with the exception, I believe, of Mr. Corwin saying that we do. Similarly, our yes and no question on who supports a ban on recreational marijuana establishments in Westport. Similarly, near unanimous with Mr. Corwin as a no to that question. So there it is for our audience. Thank you all so much. This was really interesting and informative. So we really appreciate your participation. And same would go to those members of the Board of Education who I see appearing before me now, the candidates for the Board of Education. So with that, we'll say goodnight to our P&Z candidates, and I'll turn it back to Celeste. Oh, you're on mute.
I want to thank all of the candidates because I certainly got smarter, and I'm really enjoying this, and I hope all the participants are also joining it. So now we're going to continue with our Board of Ed, which is usually a very lively and informative group. So Sheila, I see everybody, so take it away.
Thank you, Celeste. And thank you to all of the candidates for the Board of Education for joining us tonight at our rescheduled debate. I'll introduce the candidates as I did with P&Z in the order in which we drew numbers for them to make their opening statements. So first, Dory Horton, who is a candidate for the Republican Party for the Board of Ed. Robert Harrington, also a candidate for the Republican Party for Board of Ed. Kevin Christie, candidate for the Democratic Party for the Board of Ed. And Christina Torres, also candidate for the Democratic Party for the Board of Education. We'll follow a similar format, same format as we did for the planning and zoning candidates. That each of you will have an opportunity to make your opening statement. We'll then turn to questions. I now know, and thank you, Dory, for mentioning this, to announce the votes on yes, no questions. So without further ado, why don't we go straight to Dory's opening statement.
Hi, thank you to the League of Women Voters. I'm glad to be here tonight. I'm Dory Horton. I have been a Westport resident for 15 years. I currently have 3 children in the Westport schools. I have a freshman and a junior at Staples High School, and I have a 4th grader at the Greens Farm School. For the past 6 years, I have been a deeply involved PTA member and community leader. I was co-president for BMS during the consolidation of the middle schools, and most recently, PTA council co-president during COVID. So 2 extraordinarily difficult times in the district. And here I am running for BOE, so I guess I haven't gotten enough. I have to say, I have sat through countless PTA meetings, Board of Ed meetings, and budget cycles. And through these experiences, I've had the opportunity to work with members of the Board of Ed and the administration to help arrive at sensible, balanced decisions. As a former teacher in New York City and having a master's in education, this has also provided me with a solid background. I have always and will continue to advocate for all the children in the district, and why I would like to become, and this is why I would like to become a member of the Board of Ed. And this is how I can continue to serve our wonderful town of Westport. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert?
Thank you. Good evening. And thank you to the League. And it's very nice to be on Zoom with the 2 Democrat candidates and my running mate, Dory. Good evening to everybody. I'm really proud to have become a US citizen early this year, along with my wife, Claire, a preschool teacher in Westport. When we moved to America 15 years ago, we immediately chose Westport as our home, predominantly for the schools. We have 4 children, 3 currently in Staples, my daughters. For the past 7 years, I've really been an activist and a campaigner in Westport, primarily on school-related issues, such as the school budget, advocating for teacher vaccinations during COVID, and also 3 years ago, I was early and took a strong stand when it was clear we needed to change a superintendent. I've been in finance for 20 years in strategic planning. I'm not always the first to speak in a room. I don't often say the most, but I'm prepared to have a strong view when that is needed. I work in small groups similar to the size of the BOE, and I'm good at moving projects forward. Across the pond, there's an expression, not everybody's cup of tea. I have some pretty good self-awareness. I get that I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but I'd make the strong pitch to you tonight that having one person like me on the board would be good for Westport and good for our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you, Sheila, and thanks to the League of Women Voters and everyone involved in tonight's debate. Thank you to everyone watching from home, all the voters, and I'm thrilled to be running with Christina as my teammate. Before I pressed pause on my career to become a stay-at-home dad 5 years ago, I spent over 15 years in finance, investment banking, and corporate development and strategy. I became a stay-at-home dad to be even more involved in my twins' lives and in their schools. We moved to Westport 3 years ago, just before my twins started kindergarten, and I've been heavily involved in the PTA ever since. I'm running because I believe we can make our already amazing schools even better for every student. And yes, my support of the equity study is part of that. I believe we can do this through greater excellence in governance around decision-making and accountability. And we need to improve the processes for maintaining our school buildings and how we modernize them, all while doing a better job of communication, whether it be around decisions or ensuring the public is heard. I'm running because I'm ready to work for our students, district, and town. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina?
Good evening. Thank you to the League, to our fellow candidates and panelists today, and especially to Kevin. I'm really excited to be running with him. I'm Christina Torres. I've spent nearly 2 decades in education as a teacher, an assistant principal, a director of special education, and after earning my doctorate and is now serving as a assistant superintendent, sorry. So I know the value of and the work that's involved with quality education. In fact, it's the main reason my husband and I chose Westport, like many of you. As a town asset, it's critical that we maintain our district's excellence. And in my direct experience in educational leadership, it really takes a constant cycle of evaluation and adjustment in a proven continuous improvement model. And this process is sometimes uncomfortable. So it requires courageous leadership and really thoughtful oversight. I look forward to bringing my experience and to benefit the future of our district in any way that it can, but specifically to address facilities, equity, and maintaining the excellence of our schools now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll turn to questions now. And the first question will go first to Robert. What do you think is the most pressing issue facing our children?
For me right now, in the school system, I think that we have done a really good job in this district with wonderful test results, top high school in the state, really excellent academic performance. But I think we've also got to be cognizant that during the pandemic and remote learning, there was some loss of learning, particularly for a small group of students. And it's really important that the board and the new board focuses on this. And more broadly, beyond testing, I think it's very important to think about new ways of learning and an excitement into the curriculum in terms of field trips, science fairs, really bringing the real world into the school. So we're not just focused on great academic tests, but also a broader education. Some people worry you can't do both and we don't want to neglect the excellent test results. I disagree. We shouldn't step back on the test results, but we can do the other things too. We are Westport, we can do both. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I think the single most pressing issue is continuing to navigate through the pandemic and keeping our kids safe and in school. I think we need to continue to support our students socially and emotionally, and certainly, as Robert touched on as well, academically, to the extent there is learning loss in the aggregate and on the individual student level. I think it's important that the support is available and tools are in place for students at all grade levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina? You're on mute.
I would agree with my colleagues. I think for sure we should be addressing any learning gaps that happened as a result of the pandemic. So we should be assessing those and providing any academic intervention and remediation that we can offer. I also think we should certainly address any social emotional learning components. And, there are definitely areas that we've already established to do that. My high schooler is using connections time to talk about kind of mental health. I think that we can definitely use that time to pinpoint more specific issues that may have come about as a result of the pandemic. Similarly, from paneling parents and hearing around town that maybe the middle school can really kind of fortify its social emotional learning curriculum a bit more. I think that also is important. And then finally, I definitely think we should be continuing to focus on our facilities to make sure that our schools stay open and we don't fall back into this cycle. Thank you.
Thank you. Dory.
Hi, so great question. And I have to agree with all the other candidates that I think that one of our priorities right now is still navigating COVID. As we're coming out of COVID, we need to make sure that we can catch any learning gaps that the kids have had. We need to be supportive of the kids, and we can't underestimate what COVID has brought to our community. I am worried about the social emotional, and I think we need to make sure that there's enough training within our staff, that they are prepared and they know what to look for with our kids. And that's something I would be extremely supportive as a board member. Thank you.
Thank you. And because this sort of ties in with some of the things that you all responded to in that first question, I'll go to this one, and we'll have Kevin answer first. What do you think the schools have learned from their experiences with the COVID pandemic? Name something we've learned that you believe we should continue.
I think, well, a few things. One, we've certainly learned the importance of being in school and the social aspects, and also the academic aspects. You know, there's certain subjects that may be conducive to learning over Zoom via technology, and then there's others where you really need in person, like math, for example. Yeah, I think one thing that we learned certainly at the elementary level, based on my own kids' experience and others, is the win time. What I need. You know, it's created a little more specialization and attention in the classroom on an individual level, and I think that's really benefited the students who've been able to participate in it.
Thank you. Christina?
Yeah, I would agree with Kevin, certainly, on the social emotional component, just to reiterate that, that we've learned how critical that is for our students. But I would also say that academically and instructionally, we've learned that, you know, although it's certainly not the best way to teach and learn, we've learned that we can teach and learn remotely. And so I think that is something that we can take forward into, you know, the future, and maybe incorporate more technology friendly ways to instruct and learn. I think that we've also learned the value of our teachers. And so I think that we can take that forward as we continue to plan with them and liaise with them, you know, as a board and as parents in the community. So I think that those are really the top two that I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. Dory.
So I think we've learned a bunch of things from being through the pandemic. I mean, one of them is that we have had more of a connection with technology. I don't know that I want to stay connected with technology. I think it's important to get back to classroom learning. I think we've connected with families a lot better. I think we had to communicate with families a lot more during the pandemic and what was happening in the classes. And that's an important piece to carry forward to make sure communication is always there. And we may never have to have another snow day again. That's one thing we've learned. But I think I agree with Christina in that we've learned the value of our teachers and how hard they've worked, and we can continue to move forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Robert?
Thank you for the question. And this gives me optimism. This is one of the reasons why I think if the four of us get elected, will work well together, because there's so many great ideas coming out and thoughts coming out of the three of you. So thank you for that. Listen, we've definitely learned that students need teachers. We've definitely learned that, you know, kids need interaction and live face-to-face interaction. And we've also learned that, maybe some forms of hybrid learning could be beneficial as well. When I think about the positive here is, we've learned that kids are resilient, right? Parents often, and I'm one of them, that struggle sometimes. We can get emotional, we have learned that, kids are resilient. Now we need to focus on any mental health issues or loss of learning, and we need to be committed as a board to make sure we stay firmly ahead of that. But kids are resilient, and that gives us opportunities in the future, maybe in terms of, being a little less cautious when it comes to redistricting questions, when it comes to upgrading our facilities. Maybe some, hybrid learning for a few months can get us through some issues. So the kids have proven to us they're resilient, and I think that's an opportunity for the board and for the district to really work on that. So thank you.
Thank you. The next question will go first to Christina. One of the things that many Westporters agree on is that being green is important. In what way can the Board of Education work to make our schools green and extend some of the initiatives of our town?
Yeah, certainly. I think being green is a great thing, and it's something that we can definitely get on board with as a board, no pun intended. But I think in our future planning with any kind of facilities management or capital projects, I think that we should be considering solar, obviously. I think also any kind of, green spaces that can be utilized for instruction. I know that Kings Highway at my youngest school, the PTA is currently planning an outdoor learning space. I think that's wonderful. I think also if we haven't optimized and maximized our recycling programs, that's something that can definitely be implemented or optimized. And I think just continuing to infuse some of the greenery and not greenery, but conservationist ideologies into the curriculum so that we can have our students solve some of these problems someday would be even better.
Thank you. Dory.
I'm always on mute. Sorry about that. I'm supportive of any efforts towards schools being more environmentally friendly. One of the things we did with the PTA was we helped to provide grants to start the composting programs in the schools, which has been great. I think one thing we also have to look at, for instance, when we're doing the Staples roof is to think about, like, how can we wire the roof so it could be ready for solar panels in the future if we wanted to do that. I know historically it wouldn't have paid off, but as solar panels continue to improve, maybe that could be an option. Another thing we could look at is making some of the buses electric. And from what I understand, the smaller buses would be an easier way to start as an example to see how that goes for the district before we would start tackling the other buses. Thanks.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. So yeah, I think there's many great ideas that have already come up, such as increasing use of solar panels and so forth. I think Dory's suggestion about the use of EV is great. I work in the city in technology, and I'm seeing so many exciting emerging companies when it comes to electric buses. I think it's a little early, so it may not be in the first half of the Board of Ed, but within a couple of years, I think that it's a real possibility. And I think taking a step forward and putting our toe into the water, something like some EV buses to do after school classes, getting kids to after school camps and so forth would be a great idea. So I think there's many things that we can do. I'm not even sure exactly where things stand in terms of the greenness of our schools. It may be lost in a report that I haven't seen, but certainly I think an audit, not from external consultants, but within Westport, doing an audit of where we are in terms of green and where we should be in 5 or 10 years in the schools would be a great thing. We've got a lot of resources inside the town, and I think we should embrace those in terms of getting green even more so into the schools.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thanks. Yeah, a ton of great ideas from everyone. I was going to mention composting as well, as I know I've been involved in that at Coley as well. I think like many have touched on, just continuing to to raise the issue with our students and the importance of being green. I think, like Christina touched on, experiencing school and aspects of school as much as we can outside in nature. I think those are great ideas. And I think also as we embark on the strategic plan or continue with the strategic plan, I think to the extent we can, think green and think about opportunities to weave it into the fabric of what we do and how we educate, and also within our buildings as well. I think there's tremendous value there as well.
Thank you. So we'll turn quickly to a yes or no question. Are you comfortable with the current security measures in place at our schools? You can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And we have a unanimous thumbs up. So we have candidates who are comfortable with the current security measures in place at our schools. So for the next question, we will have Dory answer first. What is your reaction to the critical race theory website and now signs that are appearing in our community?
So I get to start this one off. So I'll just start by saying that I've always been very supportive of Westport doing a study where it takes a look at itself and to take a look at the district, how it's evolving, to look at the strengths and weaknesses of the district is super important. I guess this is sort of a question about race, which I would say I've been grappling with the issue of race for 47 years. I'm the product of an interracial international adoption. I grew up in a house full of white people. I have biracial children. So I have a pretty nuanced view on this. To me, race is a pretty complex issue and a personal issue where there's going to be disagreements. And one of the reasons my family moved to Westport is because it is such a welcoming and warm and tolerant community. And I think no one has the right answers to this. I think we just have to think about, as leaders, how do we move forward constructively and best with how the community is right now. And I think that's just the most important thing to focus on, is how do we get buy-in from the community and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert?
Thank you. And I totally respect, Dory's answer, and it's not an easy issue for any of us to deal with. I've definitely been outspoken on this issue. I have some comments for my local party, and I'm going to save those to my closing remarks. But in terms of the signs specifically, I think there's a lot of frustration from people about, do they feel that they are being heard? Is there transparency? And we need to be cognizant of that. And everyone has a right to free speech. I want to be clear about that. But my personal view, as someone running for the board, I think the tactics are wrong. I think the fear and propaganda and the way they're going about it is wrong. Come into the light. Please don't be fearful of the way people are going to respond to you. Sit at the table, share your concerns. I've been involved in watching as a spectator in some of these equity workshops. I didn't find everything I liked, but there was many things I liked. It wasn't about things coming from outside of Westport or coming from Hartford or coming from New York. It was from our great administrators and teachers inside Westport. We can really use this as a positive, but please, I would love to just be a little bit more measured and drop some of the fear. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I agree with Robert in terms of free speech, but in regards to the website, if a cry for transparency was the goal, there are other ways to do that. The website is divisive and filled with misinformation. The website's built on 3 pillars. The first, CRT and critical race theory. It's graduate level coursework that our district is not trained in. Also, it's a term that's been purposefully redefined to imply that nearly any teaching of racism in our history is quote unquote theory and therefore debatable versus fact. The second is censorship. Who's really being censored? Think of the brave students and alumni that have shared their experiences of racism and bigotry in our schools. To say that Westport doesn't have a problem is, to me, censoring our students and not supporting our students, and that is not okay. The third is indoctrination. This attacks our world-class educators. Nobody's being taught to feel bad. AP and honors classes aren't going away. In fact, I would argue that students feel bad once they realize they weren't given an accurate view of their country's history, which is what many Staples alumni have shared. Thank you to the teachers and everyone else who has worked on and spoken up for the equity study. This work is important and will benefit everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina?
Yeah, I think I'm going to just echo a lot of what Kevin's said, and I would agree also with Robert in that I'd like to better understand, what the fear is and where it stems from, and engage in a conversation, discussion around that, if possible. But yes, critical race theory is not being taught in our schools. Additionally, I fully support a complete teaching of history and literature. Most universities have already adopted, DEI statements that are moving in this direction and incorporating the like into their curricula. We need to prepare our students for this. And again, yes, we should give our teachers and students a bit more credit. The district goes through a lot of trouble to identify and retain our world-class teachers. I have every confidence that they can definitely implement this curriculum and a more robust and complete version of history and literature with fidelity and nuance. And I would ask, the same of our students. Let's give them a bit more credit than to assume that when presented with an alternate historical view, they will automatically, respond with guilt rather than empathy, which is, I think, the better goal. I've seen these topics taught. I've seen this play out. And generally, students do respond with empathy. For those who don't, again, let's trust our teachers to guide them through that process.
Okay, thank you all for your responses on that. Our next question, we'll start with Robert. With the recent increase of anxiety and depression in school-aged children due to COVID, do you believe Westport Public Schools have enough staff and resources available to deal with this mental health crisis? As a member of the Board of Education, how would you deal with this issue?
Yeah, thank you, Sheila, for the question. It's a great one. And I think the reality is, and I wish I could say a much more convincing answer from what I've heard, I genuinely believe the administration, the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, they're all doing what they can in a very difficult environment. When you look at, managing the back to school, going to full-time in-class learning, and also some of the surprises that COVID has given us in terms of the imbalances, particularly long lots, where there was an increase, almost as a surprise, of net 40 students. That affects, speech therapists, special ed, counselors. I think the board is putting additional resources where they can, but I really want to make sure that it's a priority of the board in early November that we stay on this topic and make sure that all these issues of social and emotional well-being are being followed up, including the loss of learning. It's not just about academics, it's about people's belonging in the school. And I think every board member, and I'm confident all four of us here, will really give this our full focus when hopefully we're elected to the board.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you. Yeah, social emotional learning is something that has continued to come up during the strategic plan focus groups, and also anxiety as well as and stress, stress from grades and GPA in the high school, also a quote unquote pressure cooker environment was a term that continued to come up during the focus groups. So I think, I look forward to the discussion and the work as part of the strategic plan. I think we should certainly explore how we as a district and as a community may be contributing to those sources of stress and ensure that the support is in place for our students. And I believe, like Dory said earlier, make sure that there's support for our teachers, and certainly to the extent they're experiencing stress, but also so they can help identify opportunities to help our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina?
Yeah, definitely. I think, as Kevin mentioned, as we kind of, went around talking with parents around the community, we definitely kept hearing kind of stress and anxiety as repetitive issues that parents were dealing with, at all grade levels. So I think for sure, taking a close look at the curriculum, again, the focus on social emotional learning. I think the question originally was, do we have enough staff? I think that should be assessed. I think in the same way that we're assessing whether how much academic achievement and learning loss there's been as a result of the pandemic, we can assess in the very same way how much social emotional intervention needs to be planned for. And yes, training our teachers and our staff for sure on how to identify students in distress, what's the process for referring them, and so forth, as those numbers may be climbing as a result of the pandemic.
Thank you. Dory?
Can you just repeat the question again?
Of
Thank you.
course. Yeah. So the question is, with the recent increase of anxiety and depression in school-aged children due to COVID, do you believe the Westport Public Schools have enough staff and resources available to deal with this mental health crisis? As a member of the Board of Education, how would you deal with this issue?
Okay, so just following along with what others have said and what I had said earlier, I think that we need to make sure that there's adequate staff in place to help kids and to recognize signs. Another thing I think that we need to focus on is social media and peer pressure. I think that adds a lot of anxiety and stress to kids. I think they're constantly on their phones sharing grades, TikTok videos, whatever. I think one of the things I also learned in the focus groups is that many of them don't really know how to handle it that well. And we as a district could perhaps think about ways to introduce classes or maybe in health class to help kids figure out ways to navigate social media better. Thanks.
Thanks. Robert?
I answered the question already, actually.
Oh, my apologies. Okay. So yes, so we'll move on to our next question, starting with Kevin. What are the Westport schools' most pressing infrastructure needs?
Great question. Yeah, I would say the most pressing need is really building a better process to address both maintenance and also how we modernize our buildings. I think a lot of great work has been done by the current board, and we're moving in the right direction in terms of addressing mold at BMS, at long lots. There's a draft maintenance policy that the board has started work on to make sure that we are taking care of our buildings, and hopefully we are being critical about what we've learned from the past, so that we can build up our processes and improve them. Looking at tools for schools and how those observations funnel up the food chain, and how other observations from within a given building funnels up the food chain. And I see my time is up, so thank you.
Thank you. Christina?
Yeah, it's certainly, in terms of infrastructure and our facilities, we know that we certainly need to address any deferred maintenance as soon as possible to avoid any other school closures and displacement of students. I think, this cycles back to funding. And so we want to make sure that, that the board is working in collaboration with the Board of Finance to make sure that we address these issues with HVAC, any kind of mold, specifically at long lots and BMS. We know that those have been issues in the past. So we want to make sure that, we're working collaboratively with our partners on the Board of Finance, because there have been some continuous pushes to trim the Board of Ed budget, and that's certainly not helpful. It's a recipe for disaster. So we want to make sure that all of our infrastructure needs are being met. And that we're planning ahead for the future to do preventative maintenance to take care of our schools and make sure our kids are safe.
Thank you. Dory?
So I have a couple, like a two-part answer to this question. I think that we need to potentially look forward as a district and think about how we want, and this could be tied into the strategic plan, but how do we want our school buildings to be used in the future? How do we potentially want to modernize them? What do we envision our learning in our district to look like? The second part is, I think we learned a lot from the Coley Middle debacle, and I don't think the Board of Ed has done a terrible job in their efforts to managing the buildings. I think we have the Antonazi report, we have Collier's looking, so we have a couple firms looking at the buildings. Antonazi is more a 5-year plan. I know there's been ideas of a facilities director in town. I'm open to that, but I'd want to hear, I worry that could be an extra layer of bureaucracy. And I think that's something board members would have to analyze the situation and work collaboratively to come to sort of an actionable, workable solution along with the Board of Finance.
Thank you. Robert?
Thank you. So the most important thing, high level, is to learn the lessons of how we got into Coley Middle School, not to point fingers, but so the district can move forward. And here I will give the current chair of the board, Candy Savin, some real credit. She's done a good job of putting some of the processes in place, and I give her credit for that. From my perspective, I think we need to be bolder, and I think we need to go faster. During the campaign, I hosted a bipartisan meeting specifically on our school's facilities. We had Donna Day there, in terms of really important in terms of helping to rebuild Coley Middle School. We had Lee Caney, a Democrat from the Board of Finance. Both of those talked about the facilities director. Again, like Dory, I'm very open to that idea. I think it's something we need to do. We need to really get our arms around long-term planning. I am concerned that things like maintenance fluctuates too much, and it was down 50% last year. So I think we really need to focus on consistent long-term plans. And Dory and I in this campaign have a 5-point plan to focus on maintenance, proper testing, and long-term capital plans. And it's really important that we give priorities to our 3 of our elementary schools that need particular attention: Longlots, Kings Highway, and Coley Elementary. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go to a yes or no question for you all. Do you feel the Westport school system is appropriately addressing the needs and acceptance of students with gender identity differences? And to those who can only see one person at a time, looks like Kevin and Christine are closer to a thumbs down, and Robert and Dory sort of wavering. It's not a yes and not a no.
To be honest, are we allowed to say? I don't really know, and I won't say.
No, that's fair enough. That's usually an option for many questions, right? Don't have enough information.
Yes, I agree with that for sure.
So maybe something to look into, and to find out what our schools are doing in that regard, and what the students might be saying. Our next question, which we'll start with Christina, is one that is an important one to the league. The Red, White, and Blue Schools program. It's a civic engagement initiative led by Connecticut Secretary of State Denise Merrill and the State Department of Education to promote the importance of civic education and involvement of Connecticut students of all ages. And it does appear on our sort of list of curricular programs. Have we effectively incorporated this program and or civics education generally into our curriculum? So it's really a question about, are we doing enough in terms of civics education for our students?
I'm gonna say, given my high schooler, my junior at Staples, and my kindergartner at Kings Highway, I haven't heard much with regard to civics curriculum, so probably not. And I would say that we probably need to do more in that regard. And I think the civic engagement can be a little bit more experiential. There might be like internships involved, certainly, field trips. We have so many local politicians that I'm sure would be willing to speak with the students, enjoy visits from them. And I think also just participation in organizations such as the League or visits from them and speaking engagements involving people who are very active in civic engagement, I think would be really wonderful.
Thank you. Dory?
I'm pretty involved with the schools and I really haven't heard much about civics, so I'm just gonna agree with what everything Christina just said. Thanks.
Thank you. Robert?
Thank you. Yeah, I think this program that the Secretary of State launched in, I think 2016 is a really good program. I think we need to follow it through on the board in terms of what impact it's really having in the Westport district. You know, it's interesting. When I was spectating one of the DEI studies, this actually came up in a discussion when they were talking about, the administrators were talking about some high-level plans for the district, and a couple of administrators brought up civics, and there was no firm conclusion, but you know, there were some genuine questions from the administrators about, you know, how much of the school week does it take up? You know, is it something we should be doing more? And as I've sat down during the course of this campaign with some of the people that definitely are concerned about curriculum, in terms of building a bridge, I do find that many of them bring up issues about civics. And I think this could be an area of common ground where, you know, we can really learn more about our country, you know, get our kids going up to Hartford to learn about the process of local government. I think this is a really opportunity, and it's actually somewhere where I think we can really build some common ground. So I think that this program should be followed through in our schools.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, it sounds amazing. You know, as I have seen a little bit of it at some point during distance learning around social studies when my kids, I guess, was late first grade, maybe, and at some point in second grade as well. But it seems like a great opportunity to help uphold our or part of our mission in terms of preparing our students to reach their full potential as socially responsible contributors to our global community. And they're, like others have said, there's so many opportunities that, like, our community is so engaged locally and in local government that there are so many opportunities for our students to learn and get involved. So thank you.
Thank you. So we have just enough time, I think, for our last couple of yes/no questions. And then we'll turn back to the candidates for their closing statements, which will be in the reverse order of the opening. So a couple yes/no questions. One being, would you support a vaccine mandate for eligible students? Okay, we have pretty unanimous no on that. Next yes or no question. Our school district's mission is to prepare students to reach their full potential as lifelong learners and socially responsible contributors to our global community. Would you add to this mission statement? Okay, so Robert would add to it. Dory probably not, and Kevin and Christina would not. And if there's anything specific in there that you want to throw into your closing remarks, that could be an easy way to do it, because that's a tough question as a yes, no. Final one, do you agree with recent reduction in physical education requirements for Westport students? Okay, nobody would agree with reductions in physical education requirements. Thank you all, just ahead of your closing, for your participation and answers to our questions, which, as we noted at the beginning of the last debate, were sourced sort of broadly from the community. So really appreciate you taking the time to answer them. And we'll turn now to your closing statements, and we'll start with Christina.
Okay, thank you. So anyone who's worked in public education knows that it requires a very careful synthesis of meaningful academics and social emotional learning, especially during times like these. CRT is not being taught in our schools. AP classes aren't going anywhere. DEI is not a new concept, and it does benefit all students. In fact, we know it can now be found in collegiate level curriculum, and our kids should be prepared for that. All that aside, this is uncomfortable, messy work. It requires guidance from leaders with experience, demeanor, and collaborative spirit necessary to make important decisions to keep our buildings safely open and our curriculum top-notch. Kevin and I have this experience, and we will continue to work with parents and the community even post-election. We understand that these are hard issues to tackle, but with your vote, we know we can get things done right. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thanks. Just real quick on stress and social media. At Colliel, our technology teacher did an amazing digital citizenship presentation to the PTA last week, and it was really, really eye-opening. So we should definitely look for more of that. We're closing. We get 90 seconds, 30 seconds less than a public comment on a non-agenda item. We're in an interesting moment in our district with the pandemic and the strategic plan and the equity study in our buildings. And I believe we're on the right path with tackling all of these, and the ultimate solutions will work together to make our schools even better. We can get there with proper governance and oversight and engagement with the community. I value humanity. I value education. I value sound decision-making. I value people's opinions. Vote for Christina and I, and we will continue to build on the excellence of our schools for every student. I encourage everyone to watch Brian Stern's closing remarks at the Board of Finance debate on Tuesday night, where he so eloquently laid out the importance of voting in the November 2nd election on Tuesday. I encourage you to think about the work required, the leadership required, the values required to lead our town, our schools, or P&Z, or any board in town. Think about candidates' resumes, their accomplishments, positions on issues or lack thereof, and the timing of positions taken. Candidates do pick a political party, and they choose what to say and they choose what not to say. Think about what matters to you and your family, and vote on November 2nd or before via absentee ballot at Town Hall. History has its eyes on us, Westport. Vote your values. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert?
Thank you. Thank you to the league, and thank you to the other candidates, and hopefully, fingers crossed, look forward to working with all three of you. So hopefully tonight has shown that it is not about Republican versus Democrat, red versus blue, when it comes to a local school board election. But to be fair, that's the system that Westport chooses. Political parties nominate candidates. So as a Republican candidate for the Board of Education, I have a very strong message to my local Republican Party. And to be clear, this is not a message to my running mate, Dory. I look forward to working with you. But my party's response to the Westport CRT signs going up is not okay with me. Their response to this anonymous website has not shown leadership throughout the party. This goes beyond the people behind the website. They have full right of freedom of speech. There's no issue with that, but it's how we respond to that message. I fear in my Republican Party, I myself am paying the price for speaking out. I suspect tonight may not get much better. In terms of the campaign, 4 points. 1, our joint Facebook account. The Republican Party has deleted our joint Facebook account, and as a candidate has not allowed me to enter any new content, not even publishing a bus meeting tomorrow for residents. Number 2, campaign emails. Just the same, as a candidate, I have been barred from emailing any voters from the campaign or any residents, not even a personal statement. Number 3, right up to the top of the ticket throughout the Republican Party, I have been told or been asked to shut up, sit down, stop campaigning, and cancel your events. And 4, when a local resident has asked me online my opinions as a candidate of the future of Trump, my response to January the 6th, or my thoughts on the big lie, without my knowledge, without my approval, the Republican Party and the campaign have deleted my comments. It is not democratic. It certainly isn't transparent for a party that talks about transparency. It is not a good look for Westport. And more importantly, it is not a good look for our party. Our local party, sadly, is acting like the National Republican Party. For the sake of our party, for the sake of our town, please, Westport Republican Party, please change. Thank you to the league.
Thank you. Dory?
So thank you to everyone who put this together and the other participants, and most of all to the members of the audience who are so engaged and focused on our schools. Our schools are such an integral part of our community, and we need to make sure that they remain world-class and that we have people who are committed to helping to guide our schools to keep improving on them. I think that there are members of the community who are concerned about changes that could be coming. And for whatever reason, I think that we need to, as leaders, and I think our leaders need to listen to all members of the community to hear different points of views. And I think that's how we can constructively move forward, when we have buy-in from most people in the community. And if people are scared APs are being canceled, or if other classes are being canceled, I think we need to ask why. And I think we need to have those difficult conversations. I personally have just been super involved in the schools because I care so much about my children's education and all of your children's education. I care that the kids are getting the best education possible. I know I have the institutional knowledge from being involved so long about the schools. And I think that's a really real asset, considering the turnover on our Board of Ed and a lot of our experienced members leaving. And I just hope that Westport schools will remain world-class. I'm pretty certain they will. And we can negotiate, we can navigate whatever challenges come our way. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you and to those listening. And just to close this out, pass it back to Celeste.
And I unmuted for a change. Listen, I'm very glad that all of you joined us today. And I'm very glad that the issue of red, white, and blue schools came in, which is a program that is supported by our Secretary of State, Denise Merrill, and our State Board of Education. This is something that the League is very much involved with. We have a representative, Mr. Armstrong, who is going to be appearing at our board meeting this week, because we believe in increasing civics education in the schools, both in our town and every town in the state. So I was very glad to hear this topic come up. I want to thank all of the candidates. I mean, you work so hard, and you work so hard for all of us. I really appreciate it. I want to thank our Cole, who is our board member. He's a member from the Reading League who stepped in to help us. And I want to encourage everyone who's watching tonight to consider joining the League of Women Voters. Men and women join the League because of our principles, our ideals, and they want to be part of the work that we do. But they choose to stay in the League because of the wonderful people they meet. So join us. Democracy is not a spectator sport. And more importantly, please remember, the election is on Tuesday. So get out there and vote. And thank you very much for joining us. Bye-bye.